All right, here we are for another edition of the Stingers Up Sacramento State Football Podcast. Joined as always by the head coach of the Hornets, Brennan Marion. Coach, even record, 2-2, 2 straight wins. Progress feels like it's being made. What'd you think about the win on Saturday?
I thought the players came out and started fast, like we had really preached and emphasized all week. We did a really good job of getting on those guys early, and really just setting out what we set out to accomplish was to really just start fast. And so was really proud of our team from that standpoint. Didn't like that we didn't, hold the standard in the second half. I think a couple of guys got some relief syndrome, just happy to, be up and winning. But we're still, fighting to finish and play to the standard.
On that standard point, is that something that's easy to show on film to the guys, or is that a sideline thing? Is that an in-game thing? Kind of where's that falling a little short of what you would want? Yeah,
we just talked about the casino rule. If you're in, there's no clocks in there when you're gambling. You just keep playing, you just keep going. And so some of our guys, we're still, with a very young team, still trying to develop that killer instinct to play every single play like it's your last. And, play hard up and through the whistle on every single play that you get an opportunity to play. It's not a guaranteed sport. Mm-hmm. The only thing that's guaranteed in football is injury, and getting hurt. So we want to make sure that guys, go out there and maximize every opportunity that they get when they get a chance to play.
Well, let's start with your offense from last game. Another game over 600 yards, a ton of points. You want to run, you ran well, you passed well. Felt like you checked a lot of the boxes. What do you think about your offense last week?
We made the guys run and do up downs this week for not getting 300 yards rushing. So
wow, that's the benchmark.
Yeah, the standard is high. I think we got 250 or 260, somewhere like that. The goal was to make sure that we're up over 300 yards each week, running the ball. We weren't able to get that accomplished, so me and K-Rich were upset with the guys for not finishing there and hitting those marks. But, from the standpoint of keeping our quarterback clean for another game, of him not having to, run around in circles, him being able to stand there and see guys open down the field, we're really proud of that. That's always hard to do, especially because, Central Arkansas did have a really solid front seven as far as, those guys that they did have guys that could rush up front and create havoc for the quarterback. So I was proud of the guys from up front from that standpoint. And then, the skill players going down the field, making plays, and being consistent when they get an opportunity to make them.
Yeah, we saw Adams kind of like an H-back or a tight end spot, catching balls, running out of the backfield. How about his versatility for you guys?
Yeah, he's just a football kid. He's, a highly recruited kid out of high school. His dad played in the NFL for a long time. At Washington, he was kind of a do-it-all guy for them as well. When they were rolling and doing really well at Washington with Michael Penix at the quarterback spot. So we just say 1-800-call Sam Adams for anything. He plays all special teams. He can, quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. He really would be one of our best players on defense if he wanted to play in the secondary or at the linebacker position. So we're blessed just to have a guy like that. And we're excited for what the season holds for him.
Is Henderson right now the hot hand or getting something that's separated? He's having a couple of really good weeks.
Yeah, I think Damian, when he first got here, he was really reluctant to change when he first stepped on campus. He was happy for the opportunity, but he really didn't know the type of work it took to become a really good player. He had an incident where he was riding his scooter and got ran over and kind of lived through that. And ever since then, he has been all in, bought in, and really worked at his craft every single day to become a complete running back. There's still, areas of improvement for him, but with his size, his ability, sky's the limit as far as where he can take it. And he's definitely a dynamic downhill running back that we like to get the ball to.
And I know you guys are all excited about Curtis too. Any closer to getting him back out on the field?
Yeah, we're not in a rush. We're going to do the best thing for him. We obviously, a lot of NFL teams come in here to see him and talk about him and Rodney and Damian. Pretty much all our running backs they come to talk about. But we're going to do the best thing for the kid. We have enough guys right now to fill in the gap. Obviously, you'd love to have one of the best players in college football back. But, we're not going to rush his process. We're going to make sure he's completely healthy so we don't put him in a situation like we did against Reno where he can break an open run and he falls down because his ankle or, leg gives out on him. So we want to make sure he's completely healthy before we put him back out there.
What's the luxury for your offense to have Flash, the fastest man out there, and Ernest Campbell?
Yeah, you just really can't condense our formations. Or, defense, their job is to take the air away from and take the space away from an offense. And with Flash, he gives us the ability to lift the defense back off of us a little bit, which helps us in the run game. And then if, guys want to come down and, stop the run and really sell out to stopping the run, then we're easy to, as you saw late in the game last week, they got 9 in the box and they don't have anybody that can cover them over the top. So he'll continue to get better. This is his 4th football game in college football.
Wow.
He's a young kid. All of our guys, Jordan Anderson, Damian Henderson, this is their first real reps in a game, like real game reps. So those guys have continued to get better, and they have the work ethic now to match their skill set.
Yeah. Have to ask about the defense. 8 sacks last week, even tops the first week where you had 7. What does that do for your defense when you're getting that kind of pressure?
Yeah, we tell our guys, the last 2 weeks, our goal was to hold the teams under 100 yards rushing, and we did that. And really, you just have to earn the right to rush the passer. If we stop the run, then they're going to be in passing situations. Then we can pin our ears back and go make those plays. And you saw last week, a lot of the time that we got sacks, they weren't pressures, they weren't blitzes. It was just our 4 guys getting after their 5 guys and making plays and getting on edges. And so Coach Ed, Coach Vang, Coach Patton has done a really good job of developing those guys and putting them in a situation where they can get one-on-ones. And our guys, credit to our players, they've made the one-on-one plays that they needed to make to lead us to be one of the top teams in the country in sacks.
Yeah, and then you get recognized. Dylan Hampson, the Big Sky Player of the Week. That's a pretty cool honor.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, obviously hard as you're exiting a conference to get acknowledgement. So anytime that we can receive acknowledgement for our hard work, we appreciate it and are grateful for that. I think there's a lot of guys deserving of awards each week, but, we're not in control of that. We're just in control of our efforts.
So the defensive guys didn't have to run this week?
No, they ran too.
Oh, everybody's running.
Yeah, absolutely. We gave up an easy touchdown. I felt like one of our best corners who hasn't given up a play at all. Just a lack of focus by him. And he'll be better because of that. I think that woke him back up. He was getting, tired out there from guys not throwing his way. And then they attacked him a couple of times and got some big plays on him. So there's always things to correct and clean up. Like I always tell you, we're harder on the guys after a win. And we're going to continue to be tight on these guys and get them to be real football guys every day.
All right, now Big Sky starts. This is league. I'm sure the goal is to win the conference title. It has to start with the first one with Cal Poly. They're 2-2. Kind of tough to read that based on who they've played. But what's your thoughts on the Mustangs?
I know that they'll be a well-coached football team. They do really good in special teams as far as their 4 phases. They have a really good kicker, a really good punter. They have two really good kickers that, have hit 40, 50, long-range field goals. They're a little banged up right now at the quarterback position, so we're trying to figure out which guy they'll bring out there. Whatever guy that they'll bring out there, I know that he'll fight to win and give them a chance. They have a really good receiver, number 10, who's dynamic receiver, could play, any of the places that I've been. He'd be a quality player from that standpoint. So we have to do a really good job of stopping him. Eliminated his explosive plays. He hurt Stephen F. Austin a couple times last week with big plays and 1-play touchdowns. And then defensively, they have 2 middle linebackers that are really getting after the quarterback that can run, get downhill. Obviously, their D lineman, number 60, he's banged up a little bit, but he's a stud. He's a real guy. So we look forward to the matchup. We're excited to bring those guys in here this week. I know, there's some past, with Cal Poly and Sac State. So we're excited to have that, conference matchup this week.
You like that? You've been in rivalries your whole life. Is that something you build up and make more of it with the guys, or it's just another game?
No, I've never been a bulletin board material guy. My hunger comes from not wanting to go back to Section 8. It has nothing to do with any teams that we play or, anything like that. It's just being hungry just because you have goals that you set out to accomplish.
Yeah. On that quarterback front, too, with them being banged up, how difficult of a challenge is that, not knowing is the starter going to be available? Is the backup play? You just don't know. Do you have to prepare for all types of guys?
Yeah, the good thing about the schedule that we had and playing a tougher schedule early is that we've seen a multitude of different quarterbacks from the standpoint of a true drop back passer, a true dual threat guy, a real runner. We've seen pretty much those 3 phases of quarterback. So now our defense is kind of settled in on knowing how to play each one of those guys from seeing that early in the year. So that was one thing that I was really, obviously we'd love to, play a cupcake schedule and be 4-0 and just play a whole bunch of, D2 teams and, fill up the stat chart. But I think for our players and seeing that adversity and seeing better players and seeing really good competition is going to help us throughout the season.
All right. And then as league starts, it's another home game, 3 in a row so far. You've won the first 2. Just that atmosphere, what you're trying to build here in this community at home. How's the home experience been for you?
Oh, it's been awesome. Our players love the Hornet Walk. I love the Hornet Walk. When they can see their families out there, that's a really big deal for them. Like this week, I said earlier in the media, I just wish that Sacramento would embrace the president from the standpoint of this is his school. This is where he went to school. He's done a lot to put this school in a national spotlight like people asked for. Obviously, everybody wants us to play Wisconsin and UCLA and USC. That's not realistic right now for our program. But what is realistic is for, we have a 20,000 seat stadium. It is realistic to fill that up. As a high school coach, we were able to get 11 to 15,000 when I was a high school head coach. So I'm sure we can do that as a, 2 million, top 20 media market town. I've been to the Kings games and seen how many people show up. We can get people here. I know there's a lot of people in Sacramento who love football, and we're welcoming everybody. We have a little bit of something for everybody, for kids, bounce houses. I mean, there's all types of stuff. My son is like, I got to get a security guard for my son running around at all the different events and stuff that he's going, fireworks, concerts after the game. There's anything that you would see at, when I was at the University of Texas, the biggest football program, 108,000 fans, you would see all that stuff, the same stuff we're doing here. Obviously, we don't have a 100,000 seat stadium, but you're seeing all the same things from an environment standpoint here.
Yeah. Well, it was cool, too. After the game ended, you guys won. You brought everybody to the center of the field, and I saw the picture later. Was that kind of like just take us through that kind of team bonding and picture to reflect the win?
Yeah, so one of the things when you're very intrinsically motivated and you're very a hungry type person and you believe that you're going to go to the NFL and you've worked really hard. So one thing I did when I was a player, I was blessed to be on like billboards and magazine covers and one of the top players and all that type of stuff. But I never really embraced any of that. I never, just took a deep breath and took a picture and enjoyed the journey. I was just so focused on, I got to make it to the NFL. I got to make it to the NFL. And so I got hurt. I tear my ACL. My NFL career doesn't go the way that I wanted to go because of injury. And so when I became a coach, I always said I was going to let the players enjoy all the moments, because I didn't as a player, because I was so hyper focused on, I got to change my family's life. I got to do this. I got to do that. It was very stressful for me. And so every time we win, we take a picture at the 50-yard line. We call it a family photo at the 50. Yeah. And, I've been doing it at every school that I've been at, and it just grows and grows throughout the year. Yeah.
Hopefully there's another family photo this week.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with a big crowd, Sacramento, you heard. That's everybody
right.
there.
That's right.
All right, Coach. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, my thanks to head coach Brennan Marion of the Sacramento State Hornets. So that's the Hornet perspective on this week's matchup, the Big Sky opener against Cal Poly. Let's learn a little bit more about the Mustangs with their voice. Chris Slyvester had a chance to talk to him about the expectations of the Mustangs and this upcoming week in the matchup between the Hornets and Cal Poly. Let's learn a little bit more about the next opponent for the Sacramento State Hornets, and that's the Cal Poly Mustangs. A long-term rival and someone that knows the Mustangs very well is their voice, Chris Slyvester. Is unfortunately, Chris, so far just the one game you've been able to call, but it's a win for Cal Poly. And as we welcome you in, let's kind of start there just as a blanket thought on the Mustangs. 2 wins, 2 losses. The wins were comfortable. The losses were double-digit deficits. So what do we know? What do you think the Mustangs are all about right now?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I still think it's kind of difficult to gauge what this team is. I will say from a talent standpoint, since Cal Poly went away from the triple option, which was 2020, this is probably the most talented group on paper that they've had. And I think, beating San Diego the way they did, and then San Diego turns around, beats a pretty good Southern Utah team the week after. And then obviously you don't take much away from the Utah game nor the Western Oregon game in which Pauly was a big winner. But I thought Stephen F. Austin was going to be a big measuring stick game. And then all of a sudden starting quarterback Ty Diefenbach gets hurt on the second series of the game and doesn't come back. And so now that was still a game Cal Poly was very much in, down just a score at halftime, but down to their third string quarterback because the backup wasn't available last week, Anthony Grigsby. Obviously, I felt like the offense had a lot of trouble moving the football when they needed to. And by the time Stephen F. Austin got to about 28, 30 points in that game, it was a pretty tall task to come on back. So I think this by far will be the biggest measuring stick type of game coming up at Sac State, and I know the Hornets are probably feeling like they're playing a lot better the last couple of weeks than what we saw week 1 and 2. But like you and I said, before we got rolling here, the Big Sky, I feel like, and it's early, right? I mean, we could be looking back at this, and sure, the Montana schools and Idaho and Davis might finish 1 through 4 in some sort of order and kind of be exactly what we thought it would come the end of the season, but right now, this feels like a conference schedule where anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday, and some of that is, I think, the improvements at Cal Poly. But you look at Northern Colorado and how they almost beat Colorado State. They took South Dakota to overtime at their place. So I'm excited to get the league schedule going. Last season it's going to be just 8 games in the Big Sky, and I know I've heard murmurs that Cal Poly and Sac State, regardless of conference affiliation, they want to keep playing one another. So, I know this could be the last time they meet as Big Sky foes, but I still think there'll be a lot of Mustang Hornet battles here in the future.
Yeah, and you mentioned there in the fact that the last loss, quarterback, health is paramount to any team. You lose your quarterback in game, that's going to be really tricky. I know that we're still, a couple days out from the game, but any guess on QB health for you guys going into Saturday?
Yeah, I know Anthony Grigsby, who's a transfer from Nevada, was at the College of San Mateo, put up big numbers as a junior college quarterback. Cal Poly had actually, even with Ty Diefenbach solidly as the starter, he was the Big Sky Offensive Player of the Week 1 after beating San Diego on the road. But despite that, Cal Poly still would designate a couple of drives in each first half right around the second quarter for Grigsby, who was dealing with a little bit of turf toe. But it does sound like he's been back at practice this week. I wouldn't be surprised if he started on Saturday. It would be his first Division I start. Redshirted at Nevada last year, didn't see the field over there. So, Ty Diefenbach sounds like he's questionable at best this week. I don't think it's as bad as initially thought. If you watch a replay of the game at Stephen F. Austin, he was really favoring his lower leg, and it took him a while before he was able to get up on both feet, which I think was a very scary sight for Cal Poly fans. But I think that the hope is, if you don't see Diefenbach this week, the hope is that he'll be around for the Big Sky opener at home the following week against UC Davis. So obviously when you're California FCS program, you don't get many in-state foes, and Cal Poly is going to knock all of them off the ledger here by the first weekend of October, having already seen San Diego, seeing Sac State this weekend, hosting Davis the following weekend. So I know back in the day, there was an old saying around these parts, win the state, win the sky. And if Cal Poly is going to do either of those things, pretty big games coming up here on the road and at home against their horseshoe rivals up from Davis.
Yeah. So when it's been good, when it's going well for the Mustangs, you mentioned, Chris, that you feel they've had more talent than the last couple of years. What looks right? What's going well for the Mustangs when they're cooking?
I think the addition, and it's his second year on staff, but Tim Rosenbaugh, former Washington State quarterback, obviously Paul Wolf, the head coach, played at Washington State and was the head coach briefly at his alma mater. But Rosie was the co-offensive coordinator last year. He's solely taking over the play calling duties this year, and you almost just get the sense that the tempo is better. When you look at the rushing numbers, it's nothing that is going to pop out to you. But I do think that some semblance of a running game, which really wasn't present a lot of last year, Cal Poly would actually bring in different quarterbacks for run game packages just to open up lanes for the running backs. I think the offensive line play is as good as it's been since Cal Poly's gone away from the triple option offense about half a decade ago, and so I think Cal Poly, I think they go as their offense goes. I think they like their defense and they're confident about their defense. They've got some veterans on the defensive line. They've got some really good athletes, I think, in the secondary. But I think when Cal Poly is clicking on all cylinders, they're able to move the football. They're able to throw the football. They've been one of the top passing offenses in the FCS, and look no further than Michael Briscoe, who's been one of the best receivers in the FCS. Cal Poly, it had taken them a while to get into the name, image, likeness game, but they had to give Briscoe a little something to stay this year. And I think they're seeing the fruits of their labor kind of pay off a little bit here because, you might remember Ramses Barden from the mid 2000s at Cal Poly, and he was a beast of a wide receiver that wound up going to the NFL, playing a little bit for the New York Giants. But I don't know if there's been as good of a wide receiver to come through here since. So I think Michael Briscoe is a guy that could be playing on Sundays, or at least we'll get a look at the next level. And for him, I mean, he can beat you on a deep ball. They can set up a screen for him. I mean, he's really has that next level speed. He's a Northern California kid from the Vacaville area. Came in as a DB initially, but obviously those hands too good to waste on that side of the football. So obviously Briscoe has been the big highlight reel guy on offense, but I think all around, from a play calling standpoint, from an offensive line standpoint, running game standpoint, deeper, stronger, faster team than they've been the last handful of years.
Well, and so then on the defense, would that be the areas of maybe vulnerability for this team? Yeah,
I mean, and you look at even the Stephen F. Austin game, and SFA, the team receiving top 25 votes coming into the season, and they didn't lose any bad games, I wouldn't say. I mean, they were blanked at Houston, Big 12 team week 1, and then they lost a tight game at Abilene Christian, another ranked FCS team in week 2, but they outgained Stephen F. Austin. We held them to under 400 yards of offense, and so I think Cody Von Oppen's done a nice job here. I think he's in his 4th or 5th year as the offensive coordinator at Cal Poly, but I think the defense. I think there's a lot of dudes on that side of the ball. And what I mean by that is, there's a lot of guys that maybe haven't tapped into their entire potential, but there's a lot of young guys that have size, that have speed, that have physicality on that side of the ball to where, the explosive plays have been a little more limited this year if you throw out the tape from the Utah game. And I think that's what it comes down to for Cal Poly's defense. Can you prevent the explosive plays? Because if you look back at that San Diego game, week 1 to open the season, San Diego scored 2 touchdowns in that game. One was a Hail Mary to the end zone as time was expiring in the first half on a tip drill. And the other one was like an 80-yard touchdown run late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter. Outside of that, you could make the argument that Cal Poly could have kept that offense out of the end zone for the entirety of the game. So I think this is a team that needs to mix up its looks defensively. I know they're struggling a little bit health-wise on the defensive line, but it sounds like they're getting a little healthier from those spots too. So I think the big key this week is obviously quarterback contain against a team like Sac State, but also limiting the explosive plays, because I don't know if Cal Poly is a team that's necessarily built, especially potentially without Ty Diefenbach, to play in a shootout.
How about the other element, special teams? How comfortable are they on return game, kicking, punting? How do they look there so far?
Yeah, Stephen F. Austin had one of the better punt returners in the FCS, and they worked really diligently at practice last week to try to even prevent any type of return. And sure enough, Poly's up 10-7 late in the first half of that game, and he rips off a big punt return for a touchdown. So I think that's still an area that the coaching staff would like to see improve, kick coverage, punt return coverage. One thing I will say, Cal Poly, they'll use a couple different kickers, but they've got some pretty good range, and certainly altitude was helping them. But Noah Cerna knocked through a 50-plus yarder at Utah back in week 2. Gianluca DeMauro, who was a former soccer player at Cal Poly. You have a lot of those interesting stories, I feel like, these days with less and less kickers growing up solely playing football. So I think Poly feels good about its kicking game and its punting game, but it's more about the coverage there for special teams. And you're often reminded that it's a 3-phase game when you don't excel in one of those areas. And I think for Poly, allowing that punt return for a touchdown to let Stephen F. Austin go up at halftime, that was a big pendulum momentum swing in that game. And I just never felt like they could get it back after that.
Chris, what's the temperature of the community? I mean, Cal Poly's got a good program. They've had a successful run there in all sorts of sports. It's such a great location. I know we love going down there to visit Cal Poly when the Hornets play there. But between Coach Wolf, between the future Madden complex that's soon to come in? What's kind of the fan base feeling like right now about the Mustangs?
Well, it's interesting timing because, by the time the ball's kicked off up there on Saturday, Cal Poly is going to have a new athletics director at the helm. And so I think that could serve as an interesting wrinkle in regards to the future of the football program. But like you said, the John Madden Football Center is supposed to be done by January. They expect that to be just a state-of-the-art facility, not only because of John Madden and the name and everything that's going to come with that, but just the ease of having the locker rooms and the coaches' offices and the film rooms all there at the north end of the stadium. They really feel like it's going to be a game changer. Now, 10 years ago, I think this would be a bigger deal than what it is right now. I mean, this is about paying players right now, unfortunately. And fortunately, right? I mean, sometimes you get to, I mentioned a guy like Briscoe who wanted to stay, and Cal Poly had a little bit under the couch for him. But, I think time will tell. But I think Paul Wolf, like I said, has assembled a team here that is by far the best and most talented since Cal Poly's gone away from the triple option. And it's so unique for Cal Poly to run the triple option as long as they did, right? Because you think of that as like an Air Force, Navy, Army type of offense. And sure, Georgia Tech ran it in the last 20 years. And I think the Citadel, the FCS, they run it, and they're a military program as well back east. But people around here always said, okay, I get it. You might want to get rid of the option. It's not the most exciting brand of football. You get down big, it's almost impossible to erase a 3 touchdown deficit when your offense is built around 6-7 minute touchdown scoring drives. And so people always said around here it was going to take 5 years to recover after going away from the triple option. And I think people around here probably thought that process could get expedited. But the reality is we're 5 years beyond going away from the triple option. And I like I said, I think this is the best team that they've had since. We'll see what that results in regarding wins and losses when it's all said and done. But I think the Big Sky, there's some opportunity this year. I don't think there's any games on the schedule that are impossible to win. Certainly some tough games looming out there, as there always is for a team like Cal Poly. But I get the sense that the program is going to be on the way back up if they're not already here this season. And I think a lot of that will be decided this offseason when they open up that John Madden Football Center, when the new athletic director makes his assessments of the program and who's running it and personnel wise and so on and so forth, and what the identity of the program looks like. Because quite honestly, they have struggled to nail down an identity since going away from that triple option. But like I said, man, I think Tim Rosenbaugh calling the plays right now, it gives a really exciting brand of football if these guys are healthy.
Everybody here is so close to the situation in Sacramento, maybe too close at times. So, like, what's the opinion of others? I'd be curious if you heard probably all the noise and bells and whistles of the Hornets trying to go FBS, trying to add stadium. They're having some NIL impact here. What's that look like, sound like from afar? And I know you're tapped into the Hornet program in this general area, but what has been your perception of that?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I mean, seeing from afar, Brennan Marion coming in, the comments made about name, image, likeness, the type of money that's been raised to be able to move to the FBS, Mike Bibby, Shaquille O'Neal on the men's basketball side. So it certainly caught a lot of attention, I would think, especially here within the state when you talk about, Sac State coming to the Big West next year in most sports and being affiliated with a program like Cal Poly for so many years as a Big Sky foe. I think when UC Davis made the move to the Mountain West, it was almost kind of puzzling to me that Davis got the nod over Sac State. And not that Sac State is trying to quote unquote settle for the Mountain West, right? We've heard Pac-12 be associated. I've talked to people at the Pac-12 that say they'd like to have Sac State in the conference. So it's interesting. I mean, I don't have any insider info, obviously, being down here, but I think it's an interesting time in college football where you always, I think, now have that threat of, let's say, the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the SEC kind of swallowing up any ACC teams or any other American Conference teams that might be worth it, and then just kind of breaking off into their own type of realm of Division I football. And I completely understand Sac State in that market where we've seen The Kings obviously have such a loyal fan base, and the A's situation's been interesting there. But certainly, there have been some nights where that ballpark has been full of spectators. So I think it's intriguing that Sac State wants the best for its athletic departments or athletic teams, should I say, and for the department as a whole. And I'm excited to see what the future of it holds, because right now it's a little interesting, right? I mean, there's a lot of question marks, at least on the surface, of what a schedule might look like next year. What's the path to an FCS playoff, or what's the path to becoming an FBS program and gaining some sort of conference affiliation? Is Davis going to make that push to try to go FBS eventually? Because I know right now their plan is just to go Mountain West in all other sports and stay as an FCS football program. But is that about the $5 million fee that it costs now to move FCS to FBS? So there's so many moving parts. I think Davis kind of being in that market or just on the cusp of that market makes for an interesting dialogue. But I'm all for it, man. I mean, the more West Coast programs you can have playing a nationally relevant brand of sport, of football, basketball, whatever it might be, I'm very in favor of it, and I'm excited to see what Sac State might be able to achieve.
Yeah, I watched you do the game, and a lot of people here, it was nationally, but locally here it was Grant and Folsom, and a lot of excuse me, a lot of future college football players out there. But it seemed like every few guys, you're like, he's committed to Sac State. Sac State's on him, and it was like, man, Sac State's really going for it.
Yeah, no, and I wish we could have talked more on that ESPN broadcast about Sac State. I mean, you try to cater to a national audience, and you don't expect a national audience to necessarily be tapped into the program like that. But certainly, you've heard the rumblings, I think, on a national level now of what Sac State is trying to do with its football program. And I think, like you said, there's a lot of good talent in the area, and I think any good program does a good job of keeping local talent home. And I think for Brennan Marion and company, going out and offering the best athletes, the best players in the area, regardless of if they're going to be an FCS program or an FBS program moving forward, I think just to be able to capture that community by storm. And I know they haven't been necessarily thrilled with the outcome of attendance. We've heard Coach say it right earlier this week. He wants more butts and seats this weekend for the Big Sky opener, but there's a lot going on, man. I mean, what was it last weekend? Sac Republic was home. The A's were home. There was like a concert somewhere or some sort of event. So there's a lot going on in Sacramento. And I think there's a big difference, obviously, between a market like Sacramento and a market like San Luis Obispo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I've been while we've been talking, and this obviously is on audio, but video as well. So those on our video portion of this can see your amazing backdrop and all your press passes. Chris, I finally I don't see a Hornet one up there, but I see it. It's above your head there. So you got what's the collection of press passes you got?
Oh, right here. Yeah, they didn't do a good job labeling this one, so I couldn't tell you where it's from. It just says Sac State Athletics. I mean, I've done a game at the Nest. I've only done one, right? Because Cal Poly is not in the same conference as Sac State, so they haven't played a ton in hoops over the years. But certainly been there for quite a few football games in seasons past. Although I can't say I've been up to a game there since Poly's ditched the triple option. So I ought to try to get up to a ball game there pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's an awesome collection. I know people have been watching you doing your national work too. That was fun to see you doing I heard your voice. I didn't see you at the very beginning. I'm like, that's Chris, isn't it? And then there was a booth shot later. That looked like a cozy booth.
For a high school booth, it wasn't half bad. And for it being late August, it could have been a warmer night. Yes. I think once the sun went down, it got a little cloudy. And so I wasn't upset, man. It was a fun little atmosphere there. And obviously that game kind of went viral for the wrong reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Grant, a lot of emotions pent up, the underdog there, and all they do is hear about Folsom all off season. So you can understand them, being a little angry out of the gate there. But man, BYU's getting a good one in Rider Lions.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I know for you, as you mentioned, you'll be on the call next week when Davis comes into town. It's not which rivalry means more, because I think there's history with the Hornets. There's history with Davis. There's the Golden Horseshoe is kind of the name of that rivalry with you two guys. Is it kind of one of those things, if you beat Davis, you've had a heck of a year for Poly fans?
Yeah. If you were to ask that 10 years ago, no. Being that Cal Poly hasn't beaten Davis since 2016, and seeing what Davis has been able to do in the Big Sky and even in the postseason last year, I do think that would be a really big win for the program. And I think it'd be a big momentum block for Paul Wolf, assuming he could build on it the rest of the season. And I mean, Cal Poly's in this gauntlet right now, and this weekend's going to be game 2 of 5 in a row where they're either playing a team that is currently ranked or was previously ranked in the FCS top 25. And that's just life in the Big Sky. But you add in that Stephen F. Austin, road game in East Texas late Saturday night. I mean, the team didn't land back home Sunday morning till 3 a.m. I mean, you're going to find out a lot about the toughness of this team, I feel like, over this stretch. And you got to get one of these, right? You got to. And I don't know where you're going to get it, because it's at Sac State, it's home against Davis, it's at Montana, it's home against Montana State. But you got to get one, because I really don't think you can sustain. And look, it's not playoffs or bust for this program. They're 2-2 right now. We know what it takes in the FCS. You probably got to go 8-4. 7-5 at worst to just be on the bubble as a Big Sky team to be in the postseason. But when you look at the schedule in the month of November for Cal Poly, if they get one here, maybe 2, let's say 1 though, you do get a little bit of a softer stretch where you get Portland State at home, you get Eastern Washington at home, you get Idaho State on the road, and you get NAU on the road. And I know NAU was a playoff team last year, and they're probably pretty good again this season under Brian Wright. I've been really impressed by what his program's been able to do. But certainly the Davis win, it's just been so long. I mean, you can throw parallels down. Last time Pauley finished over 500, 2016. Last time they made the playoffs, 2016. Last time they beat Davis, 2016. So this is a fan base that's eager to get back to its winning ways. I think they kind of understood the assignment when the triple option went by the wayside, but at the same time, it's time to get this thing rolling again. No question.
Well, we appreciate your insight. It's always good to catch up with you. I know Hornet fans appreciate the perspective on the Mustangs, and wish you guys the best of luck. And thank you so much for joining us, Chris.
Thanks, Jason. Have a good show this weekend, man.
Thank you so much to Chris Slyvester, to Brennan Marion, to all of you. Remember, you can always, hopefully you're either watching this podcast, you get the video version of it, or the audio version, however you take it in. We thank you for participating. Tell a friend, let them know that the Stingers Up podcast is out here. Most importantly, come on out to the game, watch the game, enjoy the game, whatever it might be, and let's see how the Hornets open up Big Sky play this weekend against Cal Poly. Until next week, have a great one, and Stingers Up.